Welcome to a new test and teardown video. This time it's a Panametrics, the model 25DL, and yeah, I got the manual and everything. This one is an Ultrasonic Thickness Gauge, and I was told it should work, and batteries they're taking out because they were starting to leak, and they did not damage the unit yet, so that is good. And I even got a little bottle of this coupling liquid. It looks a little bit like water, but I think there is some other stuff in this, and it's probably 20 years old, this liquid. But yeah, it's still looking fine. I don't know if there is any age on that and if this will affect the measurements, but the most important is I also got the little ultrasonic sensor and the power supply. So what else can I say about this unit? It was released in 1995 and discontinued in 2004, and I already released a video about the old version, the one much before this one, and that is the 5222, and I will put a link in the description so you can see the old model from Panametrics. I didn't have the sensor working with that one, so I didn't manage to get that one up and running, so that is why I'm super excited to get a complete unit with everything here, and hopefully we can start to play with a little bit with the ultrasonic thickness. Here's my first test. I just booted up this unit and didn't put any kind of settings or anything to it. I placed a little drop of this couple of fluid on a piece of aluminium, and this is 10 millimeters thick, and a piece of brass that is also 10 millimeter thick here at the middle. And then if I take the probe and press it, it says 9 millimeter. It's, of course, I did not put in any kind of materials into this unit, so it does not know what type of material we're talking about. That is the dissipation factor and reflection, the time that this pulse travels through this material. So let's try and see how brass looks like. So we get a higher reading. It thinks the material is thicker, so that means the wave propagates slower through brass than aluminium. I will of course go and look this up and see if there's any real world numbers to back this up. So I will write this down: 13.7 versus 9. So let's look a little bit in the manual for those velocity numbers instead of just going and Google everything. Of course, we can just check it out here. So aluminium, we got quite a lot of different values for aluminium, and the brass, we also got some values for that. And they say that it has something to do about the crystal structures, the orientations, and all sorts of things in these materials. So that means you can have some different numbers. You just need to put in the right number and the right thickness, and then you're good to go. But remember what I measured. I measured for my piece of brass, this big thick piece, I measured 13.7, and the aluminium piece that was exactly the same, I measured 9. So if you divide those two, there is a factor of 1.5, right? So if we take the numbers here, look at that. Let's just round this to 4.4, and let's round this to 6.4. This is also 1.5. So that means that I think the unit actually works. Now I just need to know how to calibrate it. This was probably the easiest user interface ever. See, I'm still here on my aluminium, and I was able to calibrate the thickness and the velocity factor for exactly this type of aluminium. And again, it is so nice loud and clear explained in the manual. Velocity calibration only. So I didn't change any zero or any gains or any other funky things you can do, but I just did exactly here. Hit the cal, unlock velocity, input now the exact known thickness, and then hit enter, and then you can just continue to do all sorts of measurements. And now we are relative to aluminium, and we can go back to the piece of brass, and then we will see the 1.5 difference. How cool is that? We could of course also go and find a lot of other pieces of aluminium and different thicknesses and see if it reads all the different thicknesses. But what I really think this unit could do, because in this case it's easy to see, this is aluminium, this is brass, the thickness can easily be measured. So here this unit can't really tell me anything that I already don't know, right? So, but sometimes you have materials that is coated with something. It could be a anodization, or it could be a silver, it could be gold-plated materials. And if you use this unit on some of these materials, I think this wave, this vibration wave, will go straight through all the coatings, and it will still tell exactly the thickness of the material if you know the material. So now you could actually do it the other way around by looking up the table and measuring the thickness that you know. Now you can use this instrument to figure out what kind of material you have. And that, I think, is super, super cool. Let's try some other funny things. What happens if I send the wave through this piece of brass this way? I will get the reflection from this end. And what about doing, let's get some more on this side. Oh, look at that, even that works. That is so cool. So you can really measure in all directions. That is a little bit fascinating. I thought it was only thickness like that, but it's definitely the reflection, doesn't matter which way. How about that? So here is the battery compartment, and here is another pack with only 4 cells. Oh, those are alkaline, so they aren't even rechargeable. But this unit was reading flat when I put on the charger, and the charger was power supply and charger, right? And then it was starting to charge the batteries, but it's alkaline batteries. They're not supposed to be rechargeables, so maybe they're just here to be able to run the unit C from batteries. But then it says here 10%, and when I put in the charger, oh, nice limo connectors. Don't you just love this kind of quality? And then you have this little 10%, and it actually goes, oops, I forgot to turn on. So now the charger is plugged in, and I think this number actually goes up real slowly. So this means it is, of course, it thinks that it's a rechargeable battery pack, and it will try to charge the pack. But what I really wanted to say is that it discharges the pack when it's powered off, and that is a problem that should be dealt with. Probably we should have a switch, or we shouldn't just leave batteries in this unit if we're not planning to use it for a long time, right? Now I'm back a few minutes later, and the number just goes up and up. Oh no. Let's look inside this fantastic unit. Hey, there's a little LED. How cool is that? And a little, what is this? A little, I don't know exactly what this one is. This is also a battery. And we also got a battery here. Or is it a power supply module or something like that? See, it says PS1. So this is a power supply module. And then we, of course, have a backup battery. We got our little analog devices. Oops, let's do it this way. And another here. Well, this is the sensor interface. And I don't know what that Sony part is doing. So here we got some RAM. We got this is a one-time programmable EEPROM. And no, this is flash. See, it says 29F. So this is flash, but this is also flash, right? That is a little bit weird. Why are we having two different types of flash like that? And the interface chips was probably for the keyboard, a little bit of power supplying and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I want to try and take out this circuit board so we can see what else is here, because I'm missing a CPU of some sort. So now we are inside, and I figured out we got the 4 screws here and no screws down there. So when I was looking inside, look at that. I of course also removed those 2 screws, and they just hold the display. So that is something to remember for the future. And also we got 2 little screws down here holding this little interconnect to the membrane keyboard. Well, that is a really neat way to do it. So this can actually be assembled in a little snip snap really fast, because there's also one of those interconnects here to the display. See, there isn't any connectors or any little wires or any other funky things that is annoying in the assembly process. So it is really fast and cheap to manufacture. So the CPU is the Motorola 68HC11, and that is a really good and powerful microcontroller. I bet that will be a FPGA, and it's running at 72 megahertz. So there's a lot of high speed going on here. And of course, because we need to generate some really fast pulses and then switch to receive, measure the timing and all those kinds of things. Yeah, beautiful layout. And I was able to clean the screen a little bit here on the inside, and also this glass here I was able to clean. And I really want to show this little detail here that is driving me a little bit nuts. Can you see it's blurred? It's probably better if I take the manual. See? And this is this anti-reflection, and you can see here it's kind of blurred, the reflections on this side. And here it looks, of course, this is treatment is on the outside, but it actually also makes the text blurred. And the behavior is different from one side to the other side. See here, the blurriness isn't really changing as much as it is from this side. I find that a little bit funny. So there's a little bit of optical funkiness here. And even when they were all the way together here, I could still see this blurry picture. So if you have one of these and it's annoying, you could probably just press out this piece of plastic and put in another one without this anti-reflection treatment, and then you will have a nice clear display. So after a lot of poking around with batteries and an external power supply and all that, this unit cannot run on external power if the battery is not working and connected. That is a little bit annoying, but that is just how it works. And I couldn't measure any leakage in 1 milliamp resolution, but maybe it's microamps, and it doesn't really take much more than just a few microamps, and then you just like 50, 100 microamps, and you just wait some weeks and you have nothing left on your battery. So that is maybe one of the issues. I don't know yet. But after that, of course, it lost the calibrations, and now it's not measuring anything. So now I need to set up the right sensor and do zero and materials and all that kind of stuff again, and then I think it will be back to work. Okay. I don't want to say a lot more about this unit, so thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.